yes, it's the podcast your podcatcher has been waiting for. It's Ubuntu Podcast Season 12, Episode 28. This week we're going to be discussing our personal wish lists for Ubuntu Desktop 2004. We'll have some command line love and listener feedback, and joining me this week to go over all of that are Mark.
Hello, hello.
Hello, how you doing?
I'm none too shabby, thank you.
Good, pleased to hear it. And Alan.
Hello, hello.
How are you?
Tickety-boo.
Good. Mark, it's been a while.
It has.
What have you been up to?
I went on a training course last week to learn about ITIL.
Oh, I've done this in the past.
How long in the past? Because apparently it's changed a bit.
Well, it's probably changed in the last 20 years since I did it.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah?
Yes.
What's this?
Well, the best way I can describe it is it's kind of like a sort of manual for how to set up an IT department. So it's sort of looking at what the various functions of an IT department need to be within an organization, and how to make sure that what you're doing is aligned with the people you're providing services for. So you're not just like, navel gazing and, producing bits for the sake of it. You're actually focused on what the organization needs from its IT and reviewing what you're doing and making sure that you're providing value.
So IT in this case is like the internal IT services department.
It could be an internal IT services department, or you could have external customers as well, or external partners serving internal functions. It's kind of tries to be agnostic as to what kind of organization you are and how you're set up, and just be a sort of general guidance for how to do things.
What kind of people go on this thing?
Well, I always assumed that it would only really be interesting for like IT managers, but actually we had a mix of, so there was me and another developer. There were a few of our delivery managers and scrum masters, and some of our middle manager type people, and yeah, it was a mix of people really. But yeah, it's not really a developer focused thing. And when I said that I'd been on it to some of the people in more of the sort of operations side of the department, they were like, "Oh, are you coming into operations then?" Because they sort of see it as more focused at them. Because what I do is sort of all contained within a very small part of what ITIL covers. But it's kind of interesting to understand other bits of our department do what they do.
Why are you here?
Yes, exactly.
I'd seen it. I didn't realise what it was.
No, I had no idea. And yeah, I found it a lot more interesting than I expected to, I have to say. As someone who, my ideal job is just to write code, actually learning about this stuff was kind of interesting as well.
Learning about writing the right code for the right people.
At the right time for the right reasons.
Well, absolutely.
Right then, well, as you listen to this, Ubuntu 1910 will have just been released.
Optimistic?
Well, no, I'm feeling confident. Definitely, as you're listening to this, absolutely positively 1910.
Are you going to put the show out late then?
We've got that editorial control if need be.
Right.
As I was saying, 1910 is released by now, and we want to look into the future, a little bit prediction episode-y, what we have in our wish lists for the Ubuntu Desktop for the 2004 release. So we've each come up with some ideas, and we're going to throw Alan under the bus first. Alan, would you like to talk us through your wish lists?
Yes. So bear in mind, 2004 is a LTS release, long-term support, and we know lots of people install the LTSs or upgrade to the LTSs and stay on them. Like, I remember reading a stat that it was somewhere between 10 times and 20 times more people are on LTS than non-LTS. So I think it's important to get the LTS right. It needs to be stable and reliable, but also you need features that people are going to want to use because it's going to survive for a long time, right? Years. So the first one that I put in there is, actually, I'd like to steal something that's in Windows 10. And Windows 10 has a thing called Feedback Hub. One of the things we hear a lot from people is filing bugs is hard. And if you're on an insider build of Windows 10, you get invited to open Feedback Hub and you can report bugs directly in it. It's a desktop application, and it's kind of a front end to a bug tracker, but it's a much more friendly way to do it on your local machine. You just sign in with your Outlook account, and then you do what you do with a bug report. You type in a description. It offers you selections for what type of bug it might be, what component of the system the bug might be in, and you can submit it.
Does it guide you through that process as to how to categorize things?
Well, it tries to guess. And it's got a little bit of, it'll do a search and try and find related bugs. But just simplistically, I don't think it needs all of that. Just something that allows people to file bugs. But the thing about Feedback Hub is it's way more than that. It's got an RSS feed in there of important development updates and blog posts. And it's also got QA in there as well. It invites you to do these things called quests. And they're basically QA. It's asking you to open an application, turn on a particular feature, try it out, and then report back here if it worked. And if it didn't, fill in this box with what went wrong. It's QA. And so having that all bundled in one place, rather than having to send people off to Launchpad for one thing and send people off to an ISO tracker for another thing and send people to all these different disparate locations, having it all in one app. And it's a fairly simple app, but it's very powerful. So I think something like that would be really good for someone to develop. And Launchpad has an API. Most of these other things have APIs. So I don't think it's, a hugely difficult thing to create, but I think it's worth having.
Well, today I learned that Alan Pope is in fact a developer. So, the Ubuntu project is always looking for positive contributions. So it sounds like you found yourself a project there.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, it is an interesting thing, and it would be quite interesting to start developing something that is useful to other people rather than my stupid shell scripts that are only ever useful to me, right?
Yes, there's definitely more value in creating something that other people can use or reuse. And certainly I recognise the requirement for this, because a couple of weeks ago, as the beta was released for 1910, I made lots of calls for come and test and file your bugs. And people did. So thank you for that. For all of you that actually, decided you were going to contribute and get involved this time round. Brilliant. Fantastic job. But then I felt like I'd let people down, because a lot of people were like, okay, I found some issues, but I don't know what to do now. And this would be the perfect vehicle to help those people contribute in a meaningful way.
And there are loads of other things that could fit in this, like imagine that call for testing. Imagine that was in the app, and it popped a notification up and said, "Hey, there's a thing that needs testing," and you've already opted in because you've installed the app, manually installed the app, or you've pressed a button that says opt in to tests and stuff. That kind of thing could drive people and guide them through how to do the test, and then guide them through how to file a bug when it goes wrong. I think there is certainly space for that. So that's my first one, is stealing Feedback Hub from Windows and implementing something like it on Ubuntu.
We might have to discuss licensing terms with Microsoft, but other than that, it's a great idea.
It's all right, they love Linux.
True. The second one is super easy to describe. Do not disturb. I want a button I can press, and I get no notifications from anything. Nothing at all. Nothing from any browsers, nothing from any applications that have their own bespoke notification system, nothing from the desktop native notifications. I want none. I want it. And it may need to have some kind of plug-in architecture to be able to cope with Chromium's weird notifications and Telegram's weird notifications. But if there was some way that, it was possible to make it extensible, then people might be able to contribute, plug-inable things to support all these other weird applications that we have, because we don't have a unified common API for notifications. They're all over the place. And so I think rather than take the elementary attitude or the GNOME project attitude of here's our API, use that, nothing else, I would rather we knew that people were using all kinds of different applications like Discord and Steam notifications and all these things. They're all different, and sometimes I just want them all to just go away, and I want to be able to press a button to make them go away.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I was going to smugly reply, well, the green version of Ubuntu does this now, but your description of Do Not Disturb is much broader than just hooking into the well-known, XDG notification specifications.
Right. I knew you had this, which is why I extended the requirements to be beyond what you'd already delivered. I'm not that daft.
Can see the trolling animation, running over in my head right now. I realise you've baited me.
But it is a useful thing, right?
Yes, yeah, it is. It is, definitely.
And the final thing that I would really like for 2004 is a thing that has frustrated me for years, is we don't do well when something goes wrong and the user is just dumped at a black screen. Now, there's lots of causes for this, like a package got removed, or the NVIDIA binary driver update went wrong, or the disk is full, or whatever, right? You could probably easily, anyone who's been around Ubuntu and Linux for a while could come up probably with half a dozen to a dozen different scenarios that would cause you to get a black screen. And for an end user, that's an appalling state to be left in, because you can do nothing. You're not empowered to fix the thing. You've got a black screen and you can't log in, you can't do anything. So I feel like we should identify use data and science to identify what the most common causes of black screen are, and figure out solutions either to mitigate them, like to prevent them happening in the first place, or to guide people to success. Like, we've got the recovery console. Maybe there needs things adding in there. Maybe we automatically boot into recovery or something to make it better. So yeah, I want us to fixate a bit on end user support when things go catastrophically wrong.
Because we see this quite a lot in we get people coming into the podcast Telegram channel, and I see quite a lot on the Ubuntu Reddit where people, they've booted their machine and they either get a blank screen or some error which doesn't get them as far as login prompt, and they're left with taking a photo of their monitor and posting it, because that's all you can do at that point.
But what you know there is that that's probably their only computer, and that they're having to resort to opening a messaging system or opening Reddit on their mobile phone and taking a blurry picture of a kernel panic or black screen or grub, or init ramfs or any one of these things. You'll all have seen all of these, or people listening will be nodding hopefully and saying, yes, I've seen that. We need to fix that. We need to stop dumping people in a horrible place. So that's my 3.
So, Mark, what is the first off your list?
Well, this has annoyed me no end ever since I started using the default GNOME shell Ubuntu Desktop. There are various cases when you're using an application, or you click a notification and you've got it opens a window in the background and then pops up a notification saying this application is ready. And nothing else happens, and you think, well, why did clicking a notification then give me another notification rather than giving me the app? Or what's it doing now that it's ready? It seems like the most bizarre and pointless bit of user experience I've ever seen, and I want it to go away. And there are GNOME shell extensions which make it go away and have various results. Some just stop it appearing, some make it so that it focuses the window, but I don't think it's acceptable to give people this in an LTS distribution. Have
you followed the bug trackers to find out why?
I have, yes.
Edify me. What is this? So in the pre-show, I saw this and I was like, what is this? I don't know what this is. And the both of you just said, wait for the show. So here we are. I'm absolutely clueless as to what this is because I run the green version. I've never seen this thing. So why is this a thing and what's its purpose?
There's some sort of deep down bit of stuff in GTK, I think, or in the GNOME libraries, which is to stop Windows stealing focus unexpectedly, basically, so that you're not, typing in one window, then suddenly typing in another because it's, decided that another window wants focus. So instead of doing that, it pops you up a notification informing you that the window wants focus. But the trouble is that it does that even if the window is grabbing focus in response to a specific action that you've performed, which means that you end up with a notification rather than the window that you're after. And yeah, I've seen various bugs where basically the developers have said, this is expected behavior, go away, which isn't very helpful, or have dismissed because of the frustration caused. The person reporting the bug has basically said, we need to stop doing this. And the response has been, you can't stop doing this because it's there for a very good reason. You need to ask your question differently, or something like that. And that adds to the frustration because it seems like they don't care about how bad an experience this is for end users.
It is a completely user hostile interaction. Like the fact that I can click an icon to launch an application and it says, yeah, your application's ready, but it's nowhere on. I've got 3 screens here and it isn't on any of them. It's behind everything else. It's like it's infuriating. And I can understand people want to mitigate the problem of typing in your password and it going in the wrong box, and you end up typing your password in IRC, I think was what one of the bug reports said. It's 2019.
Because, everyone uses IRC all the time. So that's the most important thing to get right.
And not type your password into IRC, which, yeah, okay, I've sat in IRC channels and seen people type their password, and it's quite funny, momentarily.
I accidentally typed the word awesome into an IRC channel today, and it turned out it was absolutely the correct response at that particular time.
So, yeah, I am 100% in agreement with Mark that whatever the thing is that is busted that's causing them to have this workaround, fix that. But in the meantime, let's have an extension or whatever.
We'll have to get somebody with some influence to take a look at that one, I think.
Yeah, totally.
So my next one is I'd like the experience of using Firefox in a snap to be smoothed out a bit.
Ooh.
So it's great being able to have Firefox as a snap because it means you get the regular updates, because Firefox has its own fairly rapid release cycle, much more rapid than the Ubuntu Desktop itself. And, snaps are a really good way to deliver that. But there are a few rough edges that still need ironing out there. So in particular, when you're downloading stuff, on a Debian packaged version of Firefox, you click on a file and it might offer you some options for ways to launch that file. And if you've downloaded a file and you click it in the Downloads Manager, it then either opens the file or opens the directory it's in, depending on what you do. However, in the snap, you don't generally get the options for the applications to open a type of file. And if you try and click the file in the Download Manager, it then has to ask you for permission to show you that file in the File Manager.
Right.
You then know, I'm using the snap version. And you shouldn't have to know that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I can't disagree with that. I know precisely the dialogue you're referring to there.
I do have a bonus one, but since we said desktop in particular, the other one that I'd like is better use of the top left-hand corner.
What's the top left-hand corner of the desktop? Right,
so the top left-hand corner of the desktop so it's where you've got the launcher down the left-hand side, and at the top of that, in Unity, you used to get the buttons if your window is maximized, and then you would have the global menu sort of next to that for the current app that you're using. What you have now is you have some text that says activities, which I just discovered is a button because I'd never tried clicking it before.
That's been clickable for like a decade now.
Yes. So that basically does the same thing as pressing the super key.
It is really weird just having the word activities on your screen all the time.
There's very little context to that. And next to that is a menu, which says the current focused application. And after puzzling over it for a few minutes, I realized it's actually exactly the same thing as if you right click that application in the launcher. So it seems to me that that's completely redundant. And I one of the things I loved about Unity was how well it used that space up there. Whereas I've always felt on GNOME Shell it's a bit redundant and it could be much better used. So I'd like to see something better done with it.
Part of the problem with that activities thing is on a default GNOME install, it's actually Hover that makes that activities thing.
It's like a hot corner, isn't it? Yeah.
It is a hot corner, and you can very easily trigger it, and it gets infuriating. So we turned that off in the Ubuntu theme. But still, having the word activities there is weird. I agree, I completely agree with you, and it frustrates me that when Unity went away, some of the rather excellent design things that were done in Unity went away with it, like all of that focus in that top left-hand corner is launching applications, closing applications, minimizing applications, maximizing. It's all up there in that it's all associated together. Whereas now we have GNOME Shell, it's kind of split brain. Some of it's up there in the top left and some of it's over on the top right. It's a bit strange. Your turn, Martin. Go on then.
Right. Well, with the introduction of, albeit experimental, ZFS support in 1910, I think there's an opportunity to introduce something like a factory reset or power wash feature. So without having to nuke and pave your install, you can just say factory reset and you get the system as blank. You know, you start it up and you set up your username and password and you log in and it's a fresh system.
Yeah, that's one thing I always liked on the old EPCs that ran Xandros, I think. They had a base install, and then the user space, the user files were an overlay on top of that. And when you wanted to reset back to factory, it would just format the second partition and you're left back on the original install. It meant that all your updates were gone, but you're back on an original install. I think I love this. One of the things, whenever we get to review those Dells, I always like playing with the Dell utility because they've baked this in.
Oh, like a recovery partition, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Recovery partition, reset back to factory default. I love this, and I really wish we had this.
Yeah. So as listeners will be aware from the last episode or 2 episodes ago, I reviewed the 3540 and was reacquainted with this utility in Dell. And it's great because you can do a couple of things. One, you can create recovery media on a USB stick, but also, you can just go wham, factory reset, you turn it on and you go through the first user setup experience and you've got a clean system without having to talk people through how you, dare I say it, DD an image onto a USB stick and go through the whole installation process.
Yeah, totally. Good one. What's next?
My next one I've called WSL for human beings. So we know that WSL has been installed on many, many millions of Windows workstations.
Millions?
Many, many millions, yes.
That's a lot different to what I expected.
Right, okay. And while we can't tell how many of those are in active use, we do know that there have been these installs. And if you look about the place about people that are using WSL, there's a number of things that crop up that people want to do with WSL, which is a bit thorny and requires people who might not be familiar with Ubuntu to get involved in some command line foo. So things like seamless audio hookup. So if you're running an application in WSL that needs to speak to audio, that should just work. And, you can make X applications work, but that requires that you install an X server on Windows and blah, blah, blah. And then, set up the display environment variable and various other things. And it can all be done. But I feel like that should all just happen magically. You should just be able to, apt install Pluma and run Pluma, and it just works as a graphical application.
You're talking about running basically developer tools on Windows, and the common way you install developer tools on Windows is you go to the company's website and you download their setup exe and you double click on it, right? And then you're taken to a wizard that takes you through, do you want this theme? Do you want to add these plugins? Do you want to turn this feature on or off? Where's your home directory where you want to store your stuff? it seems to me like that's a thing missing, like something that walked through, because, on Linux, a lot of people hate wizards. They hate these like structured pathways that take you through an application. But on every other platform, it's common. Like you sign up to a new web service, it'll often take you through a few slides and then ask you to sign in, which you can skip one of those. And similarly on Windows, they've got this notion of like guiding you through. And it feels like we go install Ubuntu on Windows and you click install and they go, here you go, here's a shell.
Yeah. Welcome to 1997, everybody.
Yes. And I love it. I love the terminal, but you got to think of the audience and tailoring it. And it feels like that could be made better. So yeah, I like that one.
And in conjunction with, that then, Systemd and Snaps being first-class citizens in WSL.
That would be funky, yes.
And my third pick, I'm just going to be a bit self-indulgent. I'd like to see Ubuntu Mate in Amazon Workspaces.
What is Amazon Workspaces?
Amazon describe Amazon Workspaces as a desktop as a service, which basically means a desktop operating system in the cloud that you can connect to with a remote terminal service.
Okay. And you have a bit of like persistent storage there as well.
Right. And also, when you're thinking about, machine learning and AI, quite often now, your large data sets that you want to manipulate are in these clouds, and you want a workstation that is adjacent to those data sets.
So you're not throwing big chunks of data back and forth over the internet, I see. Yes.
And there are other reasons as well, electronic vaulting and, people that are privacy conscious. And I know this sounds crazy, but I know people that are privacy conscious that stand up a temporary workstation in the cloud, travel to events into countries that they consider places that infringe their liberties with a burner laptop, and all this burner laptop does is connect to this cloud instance of a workstation.
So can you already run vanilla Ubuntu in Amazon Workspaces?
No, you can run Amazon Linux with, believe it or not, with the Mate desktop in Amazon Workspaces. That's the default experience.
Oh, that's got to hurt. That must really hurt.
Well, it does, because Amazon Linux is derived from, CentOS, RHEL, Fedora, whatever, and it doesn't carry the patches for remote desktop awareness, whereas Ubuntu Mate does. And so Ubuntu Mate is specifically geared to this particular use case. And if anyone from Amazon is listening and knows anyone in Amazon Workspaces, please drop an email to show@ubuntupodcast.org. I'll be more than happy to talk to you about how the green version of Ubuntu should be prominent. Mark, now you had a bonus item, and it looked very interesting, so I'd like you to present it.
Yes, okay, I'll just touch on this quickly. So this isn't actually an Ubuntu desktop thing, but it's something that I'd like to see in Ubuntu 2004. So I recently had a bit of a play with installing Ubuntu Server on a Raspberry Pi, and when you install Raspbian on a Raspberry Pi, you have an option when you're making the SD card, you can create a file which will enable the SSH server by default. So all you have to do then is stick your SD card in the Raspberry Pi and you can log into it. Like you plug it into the network and it's there. Whereas with Ubuntu, you actually have to plug it into a screen and a keyboard and run through some install and set up the SSH server yourself. And this is true on Ubuntu Server and Ubuntu Core. What I'd like is if there was an Ubuntu image that you could just stick on the SD card and you didn't have to plug it into a monitor ever. You could just stick it on your network and you could connect to it remotely and do everything headless. I just think that'd be a really nice addition.
Yeah, I wonder if that's possible to do via just dropping a file somewhere that gets run on first boot that does apt install OpenSSH server or something like that.
So that does exist in Raspbian. If you touch a file in the boot partition just called SSH, it will do that for you. So yeah, there's a nice bit of provisioning there. Anyway, those were our wish lists for Ubuntu, mostly Ubuntu Desktop 2004. We'd love to know what yours are. So send them to show@ubuntupodcast.org.
If you love the command line as much as we do, send us a command that will blow our minds, and we might even mention it on the show. Send your command line love to show@ubuntupodcast.org.
So, I am reliably informed that Alan has a command line love for us this week.
I do. I've been reacquainting myself with this because I've got a bunch of servers at home and I frequently SSH into them while I'm sat at my desk. And then I'll unplug my laptop from the docking station and walk away and then realise I've been disconnected because I've effectively unplugged the Ethernet cable from my laptop and I've gone wireless. And it kind of frustrates me because the connection goes dead and I have to re-SSH into these machines. So I've been reacquainting myself with Mosh, which is a remote terminal application that allows roaming and supports intermittent connectivity. So you can Mosh to a server, and you have to have Mosh installed at the client end and the server end. You Mosh to a server just like you would SSH, Mosh, user at host. And once you're connected, you could then unplug the network cable and Mosh will detect that the network has gone away. And when the network comes back, maybe via wireless, or maybe you plug the network cable back in again, it carries on where it left off.
Or maybe via modem on your...
on my cell phone or something. Yes.
No, your laptop that's only got server installed and...
It has Wi-Fi.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And Ethernet.
I thought you were going full retro with modems and stuff.
And actually, it has a GSM as well. So yeah, it has it all. So yeah, you can switch between any of those, and it keeps the connection up. It's really good.
We love getting your feedback. If you've got a comment about something you hear on the show, why don't you drop us an email on show@ubuntupodcast.org.
And now it is time for all your wonderful feedback. Dennis Burrows emailed us at show@ubuntupodcast.org.
I use Open Media Vault server to store all my photos, which get backed up to an external hard drive locally. I have, until recently, been using Duplicati to back up my photo library to Amazon Cloud. I recently discovered that Amazon stopped supporting the API that Duplicati uses, so I now need to find another cloud service to back up to. You never know when these companies will pull support or just do away with the service. Very frustrating. Yes.
I think you may be able to use rclone, which is a means to like rsync style data to the various cloud backends. So maybe take a look at that. It might solve a problem for you. Carlos emailed us.
I am a professional photographer and I use open source solutions for nearly all of my workflow. I'm also an IT professional with 35 years on the job. My workflow starts by using an app called Rapid Photo Downloader, which copies the images off my camera storage cards and sorts and renames them by criteria of my own choosing. The app also makes a backup copy in the ingestion step, which is placed on an external RAID 5 storage drive. I'm running SyncThing on my workstation, and once the copy is made, another copy is made to a homemade NAS running Open Media Vault and powered by an Intel i3 NUC. This NAS uses another application called Duplicati to deduplicate and back up the whole thing to Backblaze B2 storage. So I now have 3 local copies of my photos, not counting working storage, and 1 off-site copy.
So this kind of follows from the conversation we had last time about me using GPhotos Sync, and everyone's it seems using Open Media Vault and Duplicati.
Yeah, they seem like popular choices. And also, I can endorse Rapid Photo Downloader. That is a fantastic way to get images and videos off your camera. It does exactly what it says on the tin. Jezra also emailed us.
For the most part, I use my phone to take most of my pictures. Every few days, I open the gallery app on my phone, review recent pictures, and delete the bad ones. Afterwards, the terminal app is opened and I run a shell script on my phone that uses rsync to back up the remaining pictures to a server on my local network. That's hardcore, I like that.
Yeah, it is hardcore. Jezra, what are you running on your phone out of interest? Which operating system? I could take a guess, but I'd love to know. And Charles LaRue emailed us.
Martin asked that we share how we back up our photos and files, so here we go. I use SyncThing extensively. I have multiple devices set up to share my folders with my home server. Thereby, I always have a synced copy of my documents home directory or my phone's pictures folder. My home server syncs to my offsite backup, which is a Raspberry Pi 4 with 6 terabytes of external hard drive strapped to it. It's sitting at my brother's place and syncs with my home server on a daily basis. I love having my own Dropbox alternative as it has lots of storage for little cost, and I keep control of my files.
Yeah, I'm a massive fan of SyncThing. I love it to bits, and I have it syncing files all over the place. It's just fantastic. I strongly recommend SyncThing.
There's some great recommendations for how to look after your photo backups and avoid divorce proceedings. Thank you, everyone, for your feedback. Well, that's all for this bumper episode 28. And we'll be back next week, where we'll go over community news, goings on, and events. If you want to chat to us in the meantime, you can join our Telegram group on ubuntupodcast.org/Telegram. And if you're looking for a fine VPS, then head to bitfolk.com. And thanks to Jupiter Broadcasting and Linux Academy for making it possible for Joe and Drew to edit our shows.